They lit their kitchen on fire, flooded our entire office. There was a flood from an apartment upstairs, ruined a bunch of computer equipment and desk equipment. It cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace.
My production company also flooded. The water heater broke.
My name is Brent Uberty. I am the CEO of BW Productions. I started BW Productions a little over 11 years ago.
Hi, I'm Greg. I started off as a editor, but my first real job was doing post-production on a feature, and I did that for 2 years straight. So it was Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off, like I was doing the most tedious, stupid stuff. But the guy I was working for was very thorough, and it set the precedent for me to be very picky. And from there, I decided that I needed to get outside, so I wanted to start shooting my own films. And once other people saw what I shot, they started asking for me to shoot films for them, and I quickly became a DP, and then a producer, and then I started my own production company back in April of 2012.
BW Productions, we have around 15 employees, and we do close to $2 million in revenue every year. A lot comes once you have employees that adds to the complexity of the industry. Greg is on the Cinema Forte side of our team. That team works exclusively on projects that are really like $50,000 plus in the cinematic and feature world. So they're doing a lot of large projects, large crews, and that team is regularly doing like multi-day shoots. Know what you're getting into. Being a small business owner, and that's what we are when you're running a production company, is definitely not for the weak. Sometimes we feel like it's the grass is greener on their side. When you are a small business owner and a video production company owner, there's a couple things that we want to highlight. First is the pay isn't frequent. Even when you're a company our size, every once in a while, we have a pay period where I'm still waiting on a bunch of checks from a client and I can't pay myself at the same time I'm running payroll for everybody else. So know that you're not going to get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Sometimes you'll be spending money out of your savings account to put into buying cameras or buying lighting equipment. So that's always something to keep in mind. Clients also don't always pay on time or at all. The bigger the project, the longer it takes to get paid. One of our big clients is a client in the energy space, and religiously, even though I have net 30 terms, which means I'm supposed to get paid within 30 days of my invoice, it's taking 60 or 90 days to get paid. And these are oftentimes tens of thousands of dollars worth of invoices or larger. I know that I'm going to get paid eventually, but I'm not going to get always paid on time.
What that means is if you do have a really good month, squirrel away some of that money. Don't be like, this means I'm getting a new camera, because you always need to plan for a rainy day to kind of like bridge that funding when it comes time to make payroll, or you need to pay your vendors on time. If you want good people to continue to work for you, if you get a bad rap for not paying your vendors, you will have a really hard time finding more vendors in this small valley. The word gets out if you don't pay your bills.
And on that same note, when you're putting away with money, you're always going to be getting random taxes and fees that come out of the woodworks. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a letter from some government agency that says, hey, it's time to pay the piper. For instance, Salt Lake County has a use tax. As a business owner in Salt Lake County, I have to pay anywhere from 2 to 5% of everything I own every year just because I own it.
They're like the mafia. They'll come shut you down if you don't pay them.
You're responsible and liable for everything. If something happens, if someone gets hurt, if you take a loan out and you are not able to pay it back, that falls on you and doesn't fall on anybody else. So make sure you're insured. This is really important. It's worth every penny to have an insurance policy. In our office downtown, there was a flood from an apartment upstairs because they lit their kitchen on fire and flooded our entire office, ruined a bunch of computer equipment and desk equipment, cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace, but we had insurance. So that was the first time I'd really used it, but I'm glad I had it.
My production company also flooded. The water heater broke.
We have a pretty massive policy. It's like a $5 million a year general liability insurance policy with an extra $2 million umbrella policy that we're just required to have for one of our clients because that's what their minimum is. Most policies that are out there that you're going to need if you're renting a studio or renting gear is a standard like $1 million policy. And I remember back when it was just me and even a small team, I think it was like $500 a year for an insurance policy.
Yeah, 1 to 2 million in general liability is pretty common. If you start renting gear and you need rental insurance from renting it from other rental houses, sometimes that's like a 60 to 80,000 depending on how much gear you're renting. But yeah, it could be anywhere from 500 to a couple grand a year. If you get it for just a production, it's going to be like pretty much the same price. So you might as well, if you have a production coming where you need to spend that money to get the insurance, just buy it for a year because it's like pennies on the dollar compared to buying it short term. And you can always up it later too. So if you need just $1 million in general general liability, which is if you shoot anywhere, a commercial, they're just going to ask for that. Just blanket, give me your COI. And usually there it is. It's just hitting a button and send it out. And if you go somewhere else like a national forest and they're like, oh, you need a $2 million general liability, you're like, it's just trees. But okay, yeah, you can call your insurance broker and just add it for the remainder of whatever it is. So it's always easier to buy more as needed than buy too much and not use it.
Just so we know, everyone knows COI stands for Certificate of Insurance. If you ever rent the studio here, we require that you have a COI. So if someone falls and breaks a hip, or you have a light on a C-stand and it falls and hits somebody, that's on your liability, not ours, because you're the one using the space.
Yeah, it's typically a policy that covers many different things. I think it's called the inland marine policy. There's also a certain amount for medical. So if there's an accident, we can cover that. I don't think auto's covered unless you add it. And then there's also a thing called DICE insurance, DICE, and that is like a full-fledged production insurance for producers. It covers everything, but that's really expensive. It covers like media failure. It covers like weather or talent not showing up. It's like all these things, but it's very expensive in comparison.
Yeah, the other part of insurance is unemployment insurance. When you own a business, you are responsible to pay unemployment insurance for people that work for you unless they are a company themselves, and you will get audited. It's not a question of if, it's more a question of when. We just went through an audit with the unemployment insurance, and I had to go through and provide hundreds of documents on everybody that's ever worked for us that's not an employee. Make sure you have things like unemployment insurance. Unemployment.
So they come out of the woodwork. So many stupid things.
So it's not unemployment insurance you need to carry. It's workers' compensation insurance. Thank you, Greg. And as an individual, you can get a workers' comp waiver for $50 a year from the state of Utah. And that's just saying that you waive your right to have workers' compensation for yourself. I remember when it was just me and I was the only person for my company, it was way cheaper for me just to get the waiver every year, because then I could have proof that I had the waiver and I could send it out to everybody versus buying a plan. Unemployment insurance, though, thanks for the catch there, Greg. That is where if somebody's working for you and they should be classified as an employee versus a contractor, if they ever file unemployment, then you're on the hook as a company. A lot of our freelancers, they're technically, like if they ever file for unemployment, we're going to get hit to pay part of that unemployment cost. Is there like a book or something that says what you need? We have found out the hard way so many times that, oh, you did this wrong. And then if we've called the state to be like, hey, can you explain this to that? They'll just say, here's the policy. And then we ask, what does that mean? And they just say, well, this is the policy.
It's mostly because these laws were written back before the gig economy became a thing. So a lot of the terminology hasn't been updated. And then when the Senate tries to update them, like for Uber drivers, everyone goes up in arms and calls their senator and says, no, don't change it. So they don't get updated. So the personal property tax, for instance, is like every piece of gear you own over $5,000, that's a complete system. You have to pay 5% of its worth the first year and 4% the second year, blah, 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 blah. And you call up and you're like, hey, what's a complete system? And they're like, a computer is a complete system. A video card is not a complete system. And you're like, okay, well, I have one camera and 10 lenses, and one lens is $30,000 and the other lens is $5. Which one do you want me to use? And they'll be like, oh, you just owe us money or we'll shut you down. So it's just, okay, thanks for your help. I'll try to keep cracking jokes so you guys don't fall asleep.
The last two things, stress management. Owning a small business is never easy. You're going to get stressed. You're going to have long work weeks. I remember for the first 5 years of my company, 80-hour weeks were pretty common for me. Just recently have I started doing closer like 60-hour weeks, and I had a kid, so I had to do that.
This is if you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Greg and I have both done 20-hour days for multiple days in a row, and that's...
Yeah, I'm only 25 years old. Look at this.
So work-life balance is hard, right? It's hard to unplug when you go on vacation. If you miss a phone call, that might be a whole project that you're missing. That work-life balance is harder, whereas if you're working somewhere full-time, you take vacation, you're still gonna get paid, you still have work when you get back. And then last thing is just employees. Having employees, they're great. They help you build your business, but they also bring all of their own drama and all their own situations. And I spend a lot of my time managing people. And if I didn't do that, we wouldn't be a successful company. So you're going to spend less time doing creative and more time managing as you bring in people. All of the employees that we have that are here, they're all great. And I love them all, but just know that having employees is a thing. When you have a company, so LLC or S Corp, it also gives you an easy way to bring on contractors and then be able to write all that off from your income. So there's two different types of people that work for you. There's 1099s, which are individual contractors. I would imagine a lot of you here have probably filled out a 1099 form. Or it's your W-9 and you receive a 1099 form at tax season. And then there's the other type is W-2 employees. So when you're a W-2 employee, you work for a company, the company pays a portion of your pays half of your Social Security and half of your Medicare. So you're paying less taxes, but then you also can't write off things. So if you work for a company under W-2, you can't write off your gas and you can't write off your phone and things like that.
Yeah, because the company is paying part of your taxes. When you're a sole proprietor or an S Corp, you are paying all of your taxes. So if you are an employee of a company, they're paying 12.5% of your paycheck to the government. They're matching that, which as an employer, you're just like, I'm paying 12.5% of all my employees' paychecks. Cool. Ouch.
Know the difference between employers and subcontractors. This is where the state come after you and do an audit. There's a couple rules that they have, like technically you can't tell a 1099 contractor where to be, how to do their job, and they're supposed to bring all their own equipment. So it's a little weird in our industry because there's a lot of people that are 1099'd. So just be careful. When we got to a certain point, we decided, okay, we have to be really careful of how we do this.
I would say once you cross 300 to 500K a year in sales, that's when you start being a blip on the government's radar. If you're just doing stuff with your friends or you're just doing a couple projects a month, you'll probably be okay. But yeah, just be aware once you start making a significant amount of money, the government's going to want their cut. And so you need to make sure that you classify all the people you bring on correctly so that you're not on the hook for paying their taxes.